What's up, everyone? Welcome to our NBA Finals. That is Game 5 breakdown. We have the Thunder going back to OKC with a tied-up series, 2 apiece. We got Game 5 here tonight. I'm your host today, TJ Zworich, joined, as always, for these showdown slates, my guy Chop. Head Chopper, how you doing?
Yeah, we're doing all right. I mean, Monday, we got a game today. I mean, it's all right. I can't complain, except for I will complain about one thing is who looks at the NBA schedule and sets the final schedule, which is set in advance prior to the conference championships. Who looks at that and says, oh, here's a Sunday and it's Father's Day. Let's not have an NBA game. Let's have it the next day. I don't get that part of it, but lucky for us, at least we get a game tonight. So it's good on that hand.
These Mondays have become busy for you and I. We go NBA show straight into the MLB Grinders Live afterwards, and it's busy, but it does make for a fun evening with the MLB lineups, the NBA lineups, both going at the same time. And I am actually playing a little bit more volume than I usually do for NBA today. I threw 10 lineups in instead of the regular 1 to 3. Was just going as I was building, and there was a bunch of things I wanted to do, so I just kind of kept going, and I'm excited for tonight's game. Should be great real-life basketball. Should be fun for fantasy as well. And helping us break it down, we got Turvey Betts himself, Jim Turvey. How you doing, Jim?
Good to be on again, TJ and Chop. Yeah, I think this is a pretty pivotal game, obviously, in the series. It was Game 5. They always bust out those stats that like have all sorts of convoluted, and like it's like, well, there's a lot more to it than just who wins Game 5, but it's certainly a pivotal game. Obviously, teams just kind of been zigzagging back and forth on who wins. So OKC pretty heavy favorites, but I think there's a lot to dig into from the last couple games in Indiana. So it should be fun talking through it.
Well, let's start diving in. If you're watching us live or if you're watching us a little bit later on, right before the game, all we ask is that you smash that like button. Let's get these likes up. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, but you've probably already done that. So hit the like button on today's video. And let's start diving into it. Jim, I'll throw it to you first. Give me your kind of 30,000-foot view of today's game. How do you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, I was on here earlier. I can't remember. I think it was before Game 2, talking about how, to me, it was that series where it was clear that you didn't want to overthink it. You wanted Shea in the captain spot. You certainly wanted Shea in your lineup. There was kind of, the points gap between him and everyone else was, you just get you don't want to zag too much and overthink it. I actually think that I'm coming back here with a slightly different perspective. I think there's actually a couple options you can zag off of Shea today. We can talk through why I'm thinking that and who those folks are. But I think there's a little bit more potential to get funky here in this Game 5 in maybe even the second tier, maybe even third tier. I know we were talking before it. You've got a guy that you've got your eyes on. I think there's a couple interesting pieces today. So I think from a fantasy side, it's a pretty interesting Game 5.
All right, Chop, how about you? How do you think this game's going to go? How do you plan to attack this slate tonight? You playing FanDuel, you playing DraftKings, and then lead us into the captain position on DraftKings and what you're doing with SGA today.
Yeah, I'm just going to play some DraftKings, I think, tonight and not do the FanDuel, but how this game is going to go. So I've built so far in 4 games, basically pick the team I think is going to win the game and then build accordingly with the role players from that team and a lot of fade on the other team. And it's been a pretty solid formula so far in this series. And I don't think I'll change it now. Now, who do I think will win the game is a different question because I'm starting to really I would have said OKC at home for sure going to win Game 5, but I'm starting to think maybe Indiana is just good enough to go in there and win 2 in a row here. So, I'm thinking about, Indiana hasn't lost 2 in a row since like March the 10th, and they've been one of the better teams since January. And this is just a tough matchup for OKC when OKC isn't getting an egregiously good whistle in the fourth quarter. So I'm starting to doubt, whether Indiana's just going to roll over in this game and this is OKC, but I wouldn't be surprised either way if it's a blowout OKC or if Indiana sneaks this one out, because they may just be the superior team here in a 7-game series. So I'll definitely build the same way as I have so far, which is find the role players from the teams I think is going to win and fill out my roster, because in my captain, it will be SGA again. Speaking of captains and leading into that position, like that's what I've been on this series. Now we're back home, so it gives me a little more confidence. When we went to Indiana, he kind of he took a back seat, and he was the second leading fantasy scorer in the game in those 2 games. He was still really good. In OKC, in Oklahoma City, when they were there the first 2 games, well, he was dominant. He was like 15 plus points better than everybody. So I think going back home, I kind of think maybe SGA is probably going to be my case. He has just the most upside, and he has a really solid floor. And the other guys that I would entertain putting in that role, I couldn't put a cheap guy in captain because there's just too much value in the utility. Like it's too easy to get an expensive captain in this series. So who are the other guys I would put in that spot over SGA? They're just such a recipe for possibly failing in this game that I just kind of want to be safe and play SGA. So truth be told, I'll be locking in SGA at captain on DraftKings and filling in with utility players. Now, who are the other guys that I could entertain? I think the best Indiana player in this series fantasy-wise is Siakam. So he's one guy that I would lean to for the Indiana side. But if I do think OKC is going to win this game, which, they're heavy favorites and everything points towards that, my other options I think would fall from Oklahoma City, and it's the other 2 big guys. It's Jalen Williams, who has nice upside in this series when he's on his game, and Chet Holmgren, who they've really, slowly but these last 2 games in Indiana really saw the complete uptick in minutes for Chet. It's just his series. It's not Hardenstein. He may start, but Hardenstein's going to be limited in his minutes. They want Chet out there a lot, almost the whole game. So Chet would be the other captain that I would entertain. I'm on the Halliburton fade in this whole series. It's only bit me really in 1 game. I think that was game 3. I forget which one he went off on, but that's it. Other than that, though, yeah, I can't play. And then the value guys, Turner, Caruso, Nimhart, are other options in the captain spot, but I can't play any of those guys. They're just too cheap. I don't need to go that cheap in captain. I think it's pretty easy to build a roster with a bunch of role players and utility.
Going back to what you said about Indiana not losing 2 games in a row, I do think it's hilarious looking at this series, how they just seem so much more comfortable in that underdog role, and OKC's the heavy favorites, and it's even a piece 0-0. Indiana surprises everybody. They take the win. Now you have control of the series, 1-0. You proved you could win, and they get absolutely blown out. You go back to Indiana. It's even up. Everybody's thinking, okay, the Pacers just got 1. That's all they're going to get. Bang. 2-1. They're up. Now you're at home. You have the series lead. You can put these guys away. Oh, no. No, it's gone. And it's a 2-2 series game. Now we're going back to OKC. It seems like, all right, we're back at home. OKC is going to get the dub here. But this Indiana team, whenever they're being counted out, that's kind of when they seem to be at their absolute best. So this should be a very, very fun game. I feel a little bit differently than you on the DraftKings build today. I was having a tough time getting builds that I like because I found the salary to be like the pricing to be quite tight over there. And this is going to be, my build ideas are totally different today on DraftKings and FanDuel. On FanDuel, I think it's incredibly loose and you just spend up for SGA and all your MVPs and you figure everything else out. But over here, I am looking to do something a little bit different. I think at captain. I'll get there after Jim though. What are you doing here at captain, Jim?
Yeah, like I said at the top here, I do think this might be the day to go away from Shea. And like Chop said, the floor and the ceiling, he has both the highest floor by a lot and the highest ceiling by a lot. So maybe you're thinking it, but I think the captain ownership has gotten to a point of like almost saturation as everyone is rock and roll with that. And listen, I've been doing it for most of this series so far. I think that I saw a couple things in those game 3 and 4 in Indiana, and you do have to figure out if it's a home road thing or if they really did figure some stuff out, but they really were able to get the ball out of his hands a little bit more. So I think there is a floor here for Shea where he still scores his 30 points. He's going to score his 30 points. if he only gets a couple assists, maybe a couple fewer rebounds because he's getting dogged the entire court, I think that there's maybe something to zagging off of that. And one guy who's catching my eye is still having a really nice ceiling. A ceiling that you can almost reach up to Shea, and maybe, alongside the gap in ownership is going to be worth it, and saving you a few dollars, like you said there, TJ. Chet Holmgren. So, like Chop said, his minutes have been growing throughout the series. He's literally played more minutes every single game, one after the other. Played 37 last game. That's probably around the most we'll see, but he also played his best game. So maybe he's a young guy. He certainly could be out there for 40 minutes. But the other thing is, this was a game he scored 40 fantasy points. He only took 9 field goal attempts. He has he's got a pretty nice ceiling in terms of if he can keep crashing the glass. He got 15 rebounds last game, series high. He really seems to have kind of grown into that, some comfort there. He just has looked better as the series has gone along. There is a little bit of a ceiling here in terms of it's not a great blocks matchup for him. It's not a great 3-point matchup for him either. So, the points that he would maybe normally be getting on blocks and threes aren't as high, but if you get 40 off of 9 field goal attempts and he's getting the minutes are going higher and higher, I don't mind him as a little zag on the captain spot. But if you're doing a bunch of lineups, definitely make sure you have Shea. You don't want to overthink this and fully have none. But I think you can get a little creative, and especially if you're doing just a couple hand builds and you're really kind of trying to shoot the moon, maybe in cash, keep it as Shea. But I think Chet's an interesting piece that I don't mind throwing into that captain spot and seeing if, like Chop said, there's not a lot of guys who can reach Shea's ceiling. I think Chet is one of the guys who, if he had a 15 to 20 field goal attempt game, does have that ceiling to get up around, 50, 60 fantasy points. Whereas most of these guys, that's not really feasible.
So 2 guys that I want to shout out, and they should be no surprise if you've been catching our shows every week. One, I like Pascal Siakam. Now, he is not, I don't like him for the same reason. He is priced up higher than he was before. This is the first game of the series. He's actually more expensive than Jalen Williams. And so I don't like him because of his price. He is very expensive, but I like him because we're currently projecting him for lower ownership at the captain position than SGA, Jalen Williams, Tyrese Halliburton, Chet Holmgren. And I think it's because of that high price tag. And so that price tag driving ownership down. I do like him in large field tournaments at the captain position, but the guy that I'm going with today, even if I were playing single entry, this would be my choice. And it's Andrew Nembhard. He has gotten a drastic price decrease on DraftKings, and he was kind of he's been closer to Miles Turner in price this whole season, or this whole series, and now he's 1,600 or 1,200 below. It is 1,200 below Alex Caruso. He's cheaper than Obi Toppin, and so Nembhard's the guy that I'm going with in this spot. My thesis, if he goes off, I'm thrilled, and I'm feeling really good. But my thesis on why I like him in the captain position is less that, I don't think SGA is going to have a big game. It's that I think a few of these top guys will. So even if SGA has 60 fantasy points, if 2 of Halliburton, Jalen Williams, and Pascal Siakam can also get 45 plus, then you're looking at a scenario where as long as you have someone cheap and well performing in the captain position, and you can get up to 3 of those spend ups, SGA captain lineups aren't going to be able to get that many. And so I'm hoping those ancillary guys having a big enough game here will lead to that type of build working today. So Andrew Nembhard is going to be my guy. Let's pivot over to the utility position. If we're starting with, I think we'll kind of go 2 different. Scratch that. Ignore me. Let's back it up. I want to go straight to the FanDuel MVP position while we're here on SimLabs, since the utility optimal data, last I looked, wasn't quite up yet. It is on FanDuel, so maybe it is. But I want to pivot to FanDuel. We'll talk MVP first. This is where I feel very differently about that strategy because the really cheap options are way better here on FanDuel than they are DraftKings. Basically, the reason why I'm looking to pivot off of SGA and captain today is I don't want to have to play Aaron Wiggins, Kenrich Williams, somebody like that. I don't want to have to touch any of those guys in my lineups today. And so because of that, I'm looking to either make a mid-tier build with SGA at the captain or fade him in the captain and play a cheap option there. On FanDuel, the cheap options are so much better. We're looking at TJ McConnell. Isaiah Hartenstein, Obi Toppin still. Andrew Nemhard has gotten that price discount, but you don't really need it in the MVP, I think, over here. Benedict Mathurin is still super cheap over on FanDuel. And so because those McConnells and Mathurins and Hartensteins they've been priced up on FanDuel on DraftKings in comparison to how they are on FanDuel. That's why on FanDuel, I'm just not messing around. I'm going expensive at MVP. Chop, are you doing the lock of SGA here as well?
Oh, this is definitely a lock on FanDuel. It's just all the utility guys that come off the bench. They're all cheap. Even the starters, like you mentioned, a couple of those guys are cheap. And if you want, the explosiveness, it's pretty easy to get Chet Holmgren in there. He's massively underpriced on FanDuel compared to DraftKings. That's a pretty easy one over there. Is SGA locking him in, and just you got to get different elsewhere.
Jim, how about you? Are you doing Are you as confident making a pivot off of SGA here on FanDuel as you are on DraftKings?
It's funny because it is a little different in that there are more options. There's more there's more cheap stuff on this side, but the ownership kind of reflects that too. The ownership for Shea really, really high here. That we have the projected own even in that captain spot. So I do skew with you guys of thinking that Shea is a decent route here. Probably do still have a couple Chets, but have a lot of Shea in there. I think that the other guys, I think Siakam is definitely the one of the rest of those tier that you might want to squeeze in there, TJ, if you are doing those, trying to build up, a few of those guys to take shots on. I'm with Chop. This is not a Halliburton series. He had that one big game, but I think you're chasing if you're trying to get Halliburton in at his cost. Assists are down, turnovers are up. The matchup's been really tough. You saw, especially in the end of that last game, the game 4, fourth quarter, Dort was just like absolutely locked in. And not that he hasn't been the whole series, but it was like one of the most impressive defensive showings. I think there's a lot of, Halliburton tends to, it's the one knock on him, right? He can go missing at times. You really don't want to be spending all that much and have a guy go missing. The flip side of that is J-Dub. He hasn't gone missing, but he also really hasn't had any ceiling games this series so far. He's kind of just hovered in kind of those mid-30s. Pretty pricey to be paying for a mid-30s for fantasy points. I do think that Siakam and Chet are the second-tier guys I want. But I think I'm with you, and I think there's a lot of interesting names kind of in the middle tiers, even like kind of that fourth tier, especially on the DraftKings side, where I know your guy Nemhard there, not to move us back to DraftKings, but the price drop there really kind of opens up some interesting things. So I think on the FanDuel side, SGA definitely pretty interesting at that captain spot. But I'll be running out some Chet there as well. He's still my favorite from that second tier.
All right, let's start looking at the utility guys that we want to play on FanDuel. And then I want to go on through two different types of builds on DraftKings. One, I'm thinking, Chop, you lead us through an SGA at captain build. We'll obviously not fill it out, but we'll fill out the first few spots. And then, Jim, you can lead us through a fading SGA at captain lineup and how we would maybe want to go about that in tournaments. But first, FanDuel utility. Jim, I'll keep it with you here. So many cheap options. Who would you prioritize in the mid-tier after SGA among Halliburton, Jalen Williams, Pascal Siakam, Chet Holmgren in flex? Probably can get two of them, I think. And then who would you be looking to get in the cheaper tier, kind of 5K and below?
Yeah, definitely Siakam and Chet. Siakam's fresh off his best game of the series. Now, part of that was he had, he's not getting 5 steals again. The 5 steals kind of, really boosted his fantasy point total there. But I do think his floor is a lot cheaper than, he's cheaper than Halliburton with, I would argue, a higher floor. They have pretty similar overall points this series, but I think Halliburton floated that with one game that is a little more unsustainable than Siakam, who kind of has a tighter range on his. There's a bigger dollar gap on FanDuel in general as well. So I definitely would go Siakam, then Chet as well. And then in that middle tier, even though I kind of skew towards thinking this does make sense as an OKC game overall, found myself really drawn to a bunch of these, pretty cheap, but like starting pacer. Nemhard, and we talked about him. The big pivot there is the assists. The first couple games, he had pretty nice fantasy point totals in OKC because he was racking up assists. Then in game 3 and game 4, he really didn't have the assists anymore. They kind of those assists shifted back to Halliburton. I'd be curious what happens here in Game 5. I think that the pressure that they put on Halliburton towards the end of last game was so successful. I think they continue doing that, and I think that means a little bit more of the ball in Nembhard's hands. I like Neesmith a lot too. He might be one of my favorite guys from this tier. This could be a little noisy. You know, the home road stuff can be noisy at times, but the Pacers have played 10 games at home and 10 games on the road in the postseason so far. He's hit 34 threes on the road compared to 19 at home. So he's almost the inverse of some of these guys who are, you know, rotation players who don't shoot as well on the road. He clearly has the chops to do it. Now, a couple of times that has been, you know, like the big burst he had at the end of that New York game. That's not sustainable. You're not counting on that. But overall, it shows that he does not mind shooting on the road. And I think he's going to get a lot more of the J-Dub assignment, which means more of him in the post, which means more rebound chances. Chop mentioned the whistle. I think the whistle, if anything, is going to skew a little bit Pacers. Just so much of the story after our last game was, you know, the Shea whistle, the OKC whistle. Neesmith is a really big foul guy. That's sometimes, you know, his floor comes around when he has a tough whistle go against him. I don't think he should be stressing that as much this game with being on SGA less often. And with potentially, you know, like a tiny at the margins skewing towards, you know, Indy maybe getting the whistle in Game 5 here. I won't keep going down the board. Maybe we'll save a few guys for DraftKings, but there really are a lot of guys in this tier that I really like, you know, priced around those Neesmith, Nembhard, Hartenstein, even type players.
Chop, how about you? If you're going SGA up top, who would be your next spend up you're looking to build around, and then who would be your salary saving priority on FanDuel?
So FanDuel is really they're funny tonight almost. You get put SGA up top, and you could literally go two more superstars and still fill it out with two guys that like are all like not just viable, are going to play 30 plus minutes. You know, we're not scraping the bottom of the barrel on FanDuel, but there's just so many egregious mispricing. So first thing, I don't know what the ownership's going to look like tonight. We'll get a more accurate reading closer to tip-off, but Toppin is more expensive than Aaron Neesmith. You know, I think I'm going to lean Aaron Neesmith there, even though I do think Nembhard and Neesmith have a specific role in this series, and it's more defensive than offensive. And Indiana has the luxury of being able to do that because they are deep and they can find the shooting off the bench if they need to. So I haven't been a big fan. As I've noticed the series go on. I've strayed a lot more from Nembhard and Neesmith for fantasy purposes, better real life than fantasy. But in this case, if Obi Toppin's going to grab more ownership than Neesmith, I'm going to take Aaron Neesmith here. Neesmith, a great price. Nembhard, a good price. Like Lou Dort. Lou Dort shoots home road splits, or, you know, like you said, they could be noisy, but I do believe sometimes they do matter. They do mean something. And for Lou Dort, I just think he's more comfortable at home shooting, but he shoots 45% this year from three-point range at home, dramatically better than on the road. So Lou Dort, they got priced at 26. He's definitely a priority tonight, as is Alex Caruso. This is the Alex Caruso series. Like, this is that trade to ditch Giddey for Caruso. We could very well be looking a couple games from now saying that was the championship move to make right there. Caruso has been great this series. He'll continue to be great because he's needed. And TJ McConnell is really cheap. So I guess who am I going with after SGA? I'm picking two superstars, which one of them is Chet, and then the other one is a flip of the coin. Do I think it's a pure OKC domination? I go Jalen Williams, or do I think Indiana has some kind of fight? Then I go Siakam. So I'll lean Siakam. So I'll go Chet and Siakam as my two favorites to follow up an SGA MVP or captain MVP.
Like those calls, and I think you finish your build dependent on that script that you're talking about, Chop. If you do the OKC domination, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, maybe that's when you look at filling your lineup out with TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin, those bench guys. If you're playing Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, Tyrese Halliburton up there with them, maybe that's when you look at Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Neesmith, Luguentz Dort, Alex Caruso, guys that will play big minutes in a close game. Think that's a great call, and I'm kind of with you there as well. If the field is going to be going to Toppin, even though Neesmith is cheaper, then I'm just going to go with the starter and hope that the things don't play out exactly how they have in the past couple games. Let's pivot back over to DraftKings. Chop, I will keep it with you here, starting with our SGA build. Who would you be looking to put in as your second spend up? We can only get one other one on DraftKings most of the time, especially if you're putting SGA up there. It's tough to get three like we can on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm just I'm not going to say all in on Chet Holmgren, but I think he's my second favorite OKC player tonight, period. He doesn't, like Jim said, he doesn't have to shoot the ball to have a big fantasy impact. And if he does shoot the ball and he hits his shots, he blows up. I just like him more than I kind of like him more than Jalen Williams tonight. Like they need his rebounding, so he's going to be in there rebounding. He's going to grab some defensive stats for you. He's not going. He has a really solid floor, even if he doesn't hit those shots. If he does, he has a massive ceiling. Chet's my second favorite player to plug into these lineups after SGA.
Now, this is where on DraftKings, I'm really looking at this 5K range to fill out lineups because I like the builds so much better than picking, Miles Turner, Alex Caruso, Obi Toppin here on DraftKings. Those guys are expensive. Turner, not so much for his role, but Caruso and Toppin are expensive here on DraftKings. Nowhere near as cheap as they are on FanDuel. So I really like going Nembhard, Neesmith, Hartenstein, Dort, McConnell, even maybe Mathurin. That's kind of the range that I'm looking to because I really don't like the Kayson Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, Kenrich Williams, Isaiah Joe range. Who would you be looking to maybe give us two more here? Salary saving options for a shell lineup here, Chop.
Yeah, salary saving. So definitely, all right. Alex Caruso is a little bit priced up on DraftKings, but I still like him a lot. So, keep that in mind. I really do. I think it's a big series for him. Lou Dort, still pretty nicely priced on DraftKings. I just think they're going to need Lou Dort a lot. So I do like Lou Dort quite a bit. I have question marks about TJ McConnell going on the road. I know he's done it before, but, I would think if he has a really good game, it's more likely to happen at home. So if he's going to gather like too much ownership, him and Obi Toppin might be fades for me in this kind of a build. Nembhard and or Neesmith, one of them, solid options in this case. So I think you could go that route. I'm kind of I'm going to counter your don't like Kayson Wallace, Aaron Wiggins thing. I don't like all those guys down there, but I like one of them. OKC shown to Tennessee when they win at home. One of those guys, one of those role players down there that you don't expect. And this is how you kind of maybe separate yourself in GPPs. Nobody wants to play them. But when they win at home, one of those role players has a good game. So I think you kind of take your pick down there and figure out which one you want to go with. Maybe Aaron Wiggins probably has a little more upside if things break right for him. He has a little more upside than I think those other guys. So maybe I go that route and save some money there.
All right, Jim, let's go through a fading SGA at the captain lineup. We can still put him in our utility. We'll get there when we do. But if we aren't going to play SGA at captain, who is your first choice to build a lineup around him?
Yeah, I think you can get to a pretty interesting OKC build that doesn't have Shea even in the captain. If you go Chet in the captain and still have it, you can. I love the Wiggins shout from Chop. I think you can really get that value there. And then another thing that I like to do with an OKC build is throw Benedict Mathurin in there because he actually does pretty well when the Pacers are getting blown out. So he's kind of like this cheap option that goes well with the rest of the Thunder being in there. You can if you have Wiggins and Mathurin in there, you can get the OKC big three in with a little bit of room to work with. So you can really kind of build this, OKC. It's an OKC script, but it's got Mathurin in there because he does well just, balling out when the team's losing. He doesn't mind doing that. He doesn't mind getting those shots up. So you can have the OKC big three and Mathurin with some of the, either Wiggins or Joe. I lean with Chop on being Wiggins. He had that one game, 28.5 points. We've seen it a little bit more from him than Isaiah Joe. Isaiah Joe is also interesting. I mean, he's got an interesting ceiling. He's getting less minutes. So you can get to a pretty nice little OKC build with Mathurin in there and with some of the, cheaper options available that might get more run in a blowout. That was how Wiggins got his run was, it was a little bit more of a blowout game. He was part of the reason for that, hit 5 threes and stayed on the court because of it.
Yeah, he was very, very hot from 3 that game. And Mathurin, McConnell, Hartenstein are kind of the 3 guys I look at that if you think this turns into a blowout, those 3 should get extended minutes. And then, like Chop said, one of these cheaper guys probably does. Aaron Wiggins, I'd say I agree with you guys, probably the most likely. I will throw out Kenrich Williams there as well as one guy that I do have in one of my 10 lineups. I think I have 1 Wiggins, 1 Kenrich, but for the most part, I am sticking in that 5K range. Let's start going through.
Kenrich was a guy, I'll say just real quick, Kenrich was a guy I really wanted to be on the series. And like logically, he makes a lot of sense as to play against Indiana. I'm a little bit annoyed that his minutes haven't really stuck because I think he's a really good matchup. And when he has played, he's actually put up decent fantasy points. So maybe it's one where you're like, at some point, I hope the coach does the thing that like makes logical sense, but we just haven't really seen it all that much this series.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And I do want the feel it in the plums play from both of you who we think is breaking the slate. But before that, it's a good time to remind everyone that the MLB annual option is $425. However, we dropped the price of our Combo Pro product to mirror the MLB annual package. You might as well get more stuff for the same price, right? So if you're playing NBA, which you most likely are because you're here with us, you can get Combo Pro instead of just MLB, and you get the NBA stuff included along with golf, everything else. Combo Pro 6-month also gives you access to all of our content, tools, and projections for every sport except NASCAR at a cheaper price than the monthly package. You'd actually save about 35% by choosing 6-month instead of monthly. So sign up now for MLB projections, NBA content, PGA data, and more. Long story short, if you sign up for 6-month or a year, way better deal than if you sign up for month by month. You can also check out our Props and Pick'em package at a discount. The Props and Pick'em package features daily prop picks and fantasy pick'em selections from many of your favorite RotoGrinders experts. We're also knocking 50% off the price of your first month when you sign up at the link down below, right there in the descriptions. Chop, as the man who coined the term "feel it in your plums" here for these shows, I gotta start with you. Who are you feeling in the plums tonight? Who's breaking the slate?
Well, I'm going to save some of the obvious candidate for you guys, but so I'm going to go a little bit off the board here for a fill it in the plums. But being back at home, knowing how he performs at home, knowing his value to his team in this series right now, I'm going Lou Dort to have a big game, hit some 3-pointers, and rack up some defensive stats, and just absolutely blow away that salary.
Love that call. Very noticeable home and road splits from him from the 3-point line throughout the entire season. Maintained it throughout the playoffs. So I love that call. I'm going to go with my guy, Andrew Nembhard, fellow Canadian. I've been saying he's going to have a big game all season, all series. Today it's actually going to happen. And even if he doesn't have a huge game, that price tag has gotten so cheap that it doesn't even really matter. Jim, how about you? Who are you feeling in the ear plums? Who's breaking the slate?
I mean, I've been saying it a bunch this whole episode here. I'm going with Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren in the captain spot. I really like the ceiling on him today. I mean, rolling out some of those. I think you make some really nice builds with him in the captain spot. I mean, I do have 2 plums, so can I give one other plum, a Pacer plum as well, if you want to do a Pacer build?
I think that's up to Chop. If I'm being honest, I don't have the authority to give that.
If you're feeling it in your plums, you got to let it out. You can't hold it into your plums.
I got a Holmgren plum and I got a Neesmith plum. I think if you're doing a Pacers build, I think Neesmith is a guy I want. I think he's really got really nice ceiling to him if those 3 start falling. He hasn't had like a really big game just yet. Seems like he has one of those at least per series. So I think if you want to do a Pacers build, really nice price on him. I'd have Neesmith out there for the Pacers for sure.
If you want to go a little wild today, you play Chet or you play Nembhard in the captain position along with these other plays. If you're feeling a little less wild, you want to make sure you're cashing. You play SGA at the captain/MVP position. Get your Nembhard, get your Chet Holmgren in that lineup, get your Lou Dort, get your Aaron Neesmith in that lineup, and there's your start right there. You only got one or two more slots that you got to worry about. That's how a lot of my lineups are getting built today. Good luck tonight, everyone. We don't have any questions in the YouTube chat or the RotoGrinders Discord, so we'll get out of here. We will be back in less than 90 minutes at the time that we are live here for MLB Grinders Live. You'll have Dean and Chop taking you through the first hour, and then the second hour, second 45 minutes, the Crunch Time crew will come in a little bit early because we got an early MLB lock today. We will have Kevin Roth finally back from his vacation. We got Dave Potts, Cheese is Good, and we got Chris Kirkwood, Kirk Dees. So got a great crew coming up tonight. Stay tuned for some baseball content. Smash the like button on the way out if you have not done so already. And good luck in all your contests, everyone, on behalf of myself and Jim and Chop. I'm realizing I forgot to create the credits for today's show. So apologies, everyone. And we will see you next time. Peace.